really think that people supplying FSC woods should benefit, and you know, you should be doing good by doing well by doing good. But I'm just wondering if there's somehow we could create a kind of step-by-step process that will track FSC woods even further to make them more accessible to designers.
Can I speak to that, Piper?
Yes.
You know, I think the issue of contractors or subcontractors putting extraordinary margins on FSC wood products, you know, while it may be a legitimate concern, I think the current LEED documentation requirements already address that, since it's based, the certified wood credit is based on dollar value. But I guess what I'm sensing here underneath this question is whether there's price gouging going on out there in distribution or in manufacturing. And outside of, you know, the very early days where people had fantasies of making extraordinary, exceptional margins, everything that I've seen out there, people are operating on the standard margins for their industries in selling FSC certified products. And that is true the great majority of the time, unless someone has something new and they can enjoy sort of a brief period of monopoly. The market is too competitive, and there's too many chain of custody certified vendors out there now to be able to get away with any kind of price gouging for long. So I really think where you're seeing premiums, it's one of three things. It's either because doing forestry to the FSC standard just costs more than doing industrial forestry. And that's the reason that there's this epic battle between SFI and CSA, these industry-driven forest certification systems, and FSC, because there's huge amounts of money at stake in terms of how people manage the forest and what their costs are in managing those forests and what their profit margins are in selling the products that come out of those forests. People don't do huge clear cuts and replant and use lots of chemicals because they feel like it. They do it because it's the most profitable way to produce wood fiber within the legal framework that we have in this country. The cheapest way to produce wood is to do it illegally, to mine it from the forest. And there's a lot of that happens globally as well. And then you go up from that and you have industrial forestry. And FSC represents a standard that's well above that. You pay a premium for wood that comes from environmentally and socially responsible forestry for the same reasons that folks pay premiums for organic agricultural produce, because it represents the best thing for our planet and ultimately the best thing for our own health. So I think that that's one reason that there's a premium. Another is economies of scale. And this is an ongoing challenge for FSC, I think, particularly in the building product side, on the softwood side, where SFI is so strong. There's been effectively an embargo that at one time was very effective and is much less effective now, because there's this ongoing demand signal that's come from the green building movement that has helped drive growth in FSC supply, growth in FSC distribution, and has helped bring costs down. But for some products, there's still a lack of economies of scale. And by and large, I don't think you're seeing a premium because of price gouging or deal with cost.
So I see three strategies here that we could look into. One is the obvious education of what makes up a sustainable forest, and why we should care, and why we should be willing to pay more. And when I say pay more, it doesn't necessarily mean that we should add additional costs to our projects, but maybe that cost could be offset somehow. This hasn't really been looked into. I don't know of any grants available for using sustainable woods, but there are plenty of grants available for energy efficient appliances and so forth, and this is an area that is kind of untapped. But the other is providing simply a list of all the people that are distributing sustainable wood, so that when a contractor says, I don't know where to find it, as a designer, I'm pretty much useless there. So if I could say, have you looked at these 25 resources? The other is maybe there needs to be a form of an outlined training for distributors who aren't yet providing FSC certified woods and want to provide them, but they don't know kind of how to go about that. And I think maybe, I don't know if that's provided on the FSC website.
So actually the last three things that you mentioned are all on our site. As far as information about chain of custody and understanding the process for going through an assessment and what's required of you as a chain of custody certificate holder in terms of inventory controls and monitoring and that sort of thing. That's all there. And then in terms of finding product, and we have, especially one area where we're lacking and we've got a fairly significant project underway is really having a consumer accessible information site. That's in development right now. But for the trades and for those, business to business, we actually have two really good, I think, useful tools. One that's owned and developed by us, and the other one by a third party called Metaphor. But those are fsc-info.org is a site where all of our certificate holders are listed, as well as kind of gross product categories that we carry and where they're located. So if you're looking for certificate holders, in your vicinity, that's relatively straightforward.
I want to go back a little bit to some of Ellen's questions. You had some very pointed questions. One being, can you supply an aggressive delivery schedule? Maybe you can speak about, in terms of, as a designer, maybe point to me with this. What can I do when I'm designing for either a specific hardwood or for a spec home in mass production? What can I do when I'm monitoring or reviewing specifications? Do I need to make sure a longer lead time is written in, or do I need to point people to distributors?
Well, in the case of hardwoods, it's simple as picking up the phone and I think and calling a supplier, because I still see it where we see the design community think that they put the initials FSC in front of the wood, it's going to appear. I just saw one a couple weeks ago for Wingate. It said FSC certified Wingate. Well, no such beast, and the problem is just leads to frustration. So if the design community can kind of get out ahead of it and make a few phone calls, go on the site, whether it's the FSC site or the Metaphor site, to see if these woods actually exist before you try to specify these woods.
In 1999, when we first started stocking FSC certified lumber, I remember interviewing green builders who said, I buy this wood and I store it in my backyard, and then when it's time to build, I build. And I thought, gosh, I'm a lumber company. I've never heard builders say that. They want it tomorrow. So we chose to take a position to stock FSC certified lumber. $500,000 worth of FSC wood on the ground. And we could ship a subdivision tomorrow. So the people who have been in it long enough have the wood on the ground, they're ready to go, and they can ship it. And we ship just like any other product in normal schedules that a large production builder is used to.
And I asked him these same questions. Could you meet an aggressive schedule, and do you continue to deliver in packages like our framers request?
Yes.
He couldn't. He said, on a 70-day framing discretion for a 250-unit project, he said we couldn't do it. This is something that is fairly recent, and it is now changing, which is great. That's great to hear in the softwood market for us.
Mm-hmm. It's changing quickly to the softwood. By summer, we'll have doubled our amount of supply and doubled the amount of product that we can